Some time ago, I might have casted a game saying that it was Vampire Coast versus Khorne in the intro when it was in fact Vampire Coast versus Warriors of Chaos. So to atone for that, here's some actual Khorne versus Vampire Coast, and it's a Forsaken front line, which is it's definitely something here on Blue Reach River. It's going to be something because they've got high speed, high DPS, terrible melee defense, to the point where the zombies can actually, like, get hits against them. But they are going to be able to burst down units quite quickly, so interesting. We've got the 5 Khorne Forsaken Blood Reaper hero here on foot to support them. In the woods, we've got some Minotaurs for anti-large, 1 Chaos Chariot, and a Herald. Looks like he's on the Crusher, or on his motorcycle, actually. Wow, very interesting. On the Shrine, yeah, that does give him Gore Feast and a Totem of Endless Bloodletting and kind of more of a support role, which is interesting. You don't see that a ton. Hounds the Blood Feast here, and some Horsemen Throwing Axes with a few XP Chevrons, and more Flesh Hounds. Against this Missile Defense Vampire Coast build. It's going to be interesting, certainly. We've got 3 deck guns, including the Regiment of Renown, some Scurvy Dogs, and lots of zombies scattered around, including the Regiment of Renown, dual hand weapon, Tide of Skilled. Got some bombers in here as well, some animated hulks, a single Morngul, Aranessa, Wild Choice, and Fleet Captain of Death. So, I mean, this is definitely a Vampire Coast build. But, yeah, the deck guns are definitely an interesting one. Their range isn't incredible. Their DPS is pretty good against infantry-sized targets, though, so let's see how they do. Firing in here. Shade Wraith Gunner is going to get some contact immediately, and... oh yeah, the one unit looks like focused on the Blood Reaper, which is probably going to be a mistake. Forsaken aren't actually taking that much damage on the approach, though, so we'll see. They're going to be able to get in here and do plenty of DPS, although the bombs are definitely going to rain in as well. It's a hard time to be Forsaken in this build. That said, the one flank overload is definitely inbound with the Marauder Horsemen and the Hounds now moving in to attack in melee. Yeah, the bombs just brutalizing the Forsaken in many ways. A couple of them are going to get through and do some damage, but even with the damage they have taken, they're still like clubbing the one zombie that's at least in front of them, right? Oof, this one does miss the charge, which is a little bit painful there, but zombies definitely losing out hard. The Flesh Hounds also just murking Scurvy Dogs. And this Khorne flank, beautifully executed, is looking pretty scary. Got the Marauder Horsemen in position to charge into the deck guns and their anti-infantry. Extra damage and charge, extra weapon strength. It's going to be a bad time for these deck guns as they just get shut down in an alarmingly quick amount of time. Likewise, even the Scurvy Dogs here aren't going to trade great against the Khorne Throwing Axes. I mean, they'll trade decently cost-effectively just because of the low defensive stats, but ooh, yeah, Shade Wraith's also having something to say about that engagement. Actually, both of the deck guns just turning and firing there. Forsaken getting exploded in the center, but the ones on the flanks definitely doing a little bit better, able to come in and collapse a handful of units here. And at least from the one big overload side, it's going pretty well for Khorne. They've got these Minotaurs now looking for a beautiful rear charge opportunity against those animated hulks. The Hounds here doing magic damage, of course, is going to be great, killing the ethereal Shade Wraith Gunners. Regiment of Renown here also, the dampen effect. What is it? Remove magical attacks? Yeah, so it's going to remove the magical attacks from the Shade Wraiths themselves, which is, I guess, interesting. Yeah, Minotaurs. Again, the Khorne, because Vampire Coast was so spread out here, Khorne's able to kind of pick out with their fast units individual 1v1s where they're going to win decisively, right? Here, we'll see. The Black Spot, of course, and anti-large units. Once they turn around and start fighting, they're actually going to do a decent job against those Khorne Marauders. They'll take some damage in the process, but the Herald of Khorne getting through. It's one thing when you take a more spread out position as Vampire Coast, because zombies are so slow, oftentimes you can find yourself in a situation like this where your opponent's able to kind of dictate, in many ways, the pace of the battle. That said, I mean, balance power still in Coast's favor at this point, as a lot of units are struggling. Khorne Minotaur is going to move on in for their next large, high-value target in the monstrous infantry battle. These Mornghuls are going to lose out hard. Not to mention, all the fire damage for Khorne, too, does mean any passive healing here, like the hunger for these Mornghuls, it's just not going to matter as they get absolutely murderized. Wow, very brutal stuff. Speaking of brutal stuff, though, Forsaken, little Locus of Wrath on them. They're going to be, yeah, very high melee attack. 58 melee attack, just whopping those skeletons down. Even the animated Hulks move in, and yeah, the Vampire Coast player just gonna throw in the towel there. Kind of understandable. Although, I don't know, maybe Arnessa actually could have pulled something out. Arnessa is still quite healthy, a decent enough character. Does pretty good damage against infantry on foot, actually, all things considered. But yeah, a lot of the power units have been lost. Look at the black spot, though, actually. I don't know, I think LaRouge might have backed out a little bit early on that one, hard to say, but the black spot certainly still had a lot left to say. I don't know. It's Khorne, the Forsaken were kind of resurgent, although didn't end up getting all that much actual value. The Minotaurs definitely tactically did what they needed to and dealt with some of the monstrous infantry here. But yeah, I don't know. The bombers, I guess, were out of ammunition there. A lot of the units are dead for Vampire Coast, but they still have enough. They were able to form up a blob with what was left. Arnessa could potentially do something, but maybe not. Hard to say. Definitely an interesting one, though, and the Forsaken sort of rush here, again, ends up proving pretty effective. One of the Marauder Horsemen, also 900 value on them. The other one suffers pretty badly, but still, just the high mobility, kind of being able to catch the Vampire Coast in such a spread position and just nuke kind of isolated high-value units, right? Despite that, though, one of the deck guns still able to pay for themselves. Shade Wraith Gunners did a decent job as well. Yeah, Black Spot, we've seen a lot of replays where they haven't really performed, but this is definitely a perfect illustration of what makes them a great backline unit, which is they can defend themselves, right, from cavalry. So definitely very interesting. A little bit of a short one, so let's just talk quickly about some things here in the end game, I guess. So yeah, the biggest thing to think about with Vampire Coast is positioning-wise, right? Like, I'm not saying spread builds are necessarily always bad, but you got to be aware of who you're up against. Khorne, sort of having that Warriors of Chaos type identity, is going to have a lot of fast attack units, potentially, which means you kind of need to plan on, you know, for response, right? And particularly, the Marauder Horsemen of Khorne present a little bit of a problem here, and just in general, like even the Chaos Warhounds, the basic ones, right? Because Scurvy Dogs don't trade well with any of these mobility units, sort of puts you in a little bit of a tough position on that front, right? It almost makes you want to play a little bit more maybe tall and defensive with higher tier units that can maybe try and outlast Khorne, right? Khorne does have a lot of DPS, but I don't know. Certainly not an expert in this matchup, and it does seem like it can go a number of different ways, but I go ahead and come over to the coast here. Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, a spread build is definitely something, but in general, sort of against any of the warriors type factions, beastmen, a lot of the fast rush armies that have the tools to kill stationary range units like what we saw there with the deck guns, I would probably just go with something else, you know, right? Try and find a different form of DPS, whether that be maybe optioning in some Death Guards, perhaps. The Halberds, of course, especially, can be very good against large type units, and the anti-infantry ones, obviously, instant infantry. I know, this is a hot take city over here, but likewise, again, the monstrous thing, I'm just not really sure it would work all that well against Khorne. I think you would end up not really also having enough DPS, but hard to say. Something like the Gallows Giant, you don't really see too much, because I don't think the weapon strength is actually, or the missile strength is actually incredible, but I don't know, maybe you could get something done with this, and with, like, some supporting elements here, try and just do you know, like burst AoE damage, right? Like the bombers we saw there were certainly effective against the Forsaken, so probably keep them in here. And I don't know, the main thing is I would probably drop the deck guns and just bring something else. I don't know. I mean, Furies are definitely a danger, but deck droppers seem like they might be decent here. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think down in the comments below about this matchup, and just in general, with Khorne's sort of mobility versus Vampire Coast's lack of mobility. It definitely makes this matchup interesting. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.